global variable called operation and another one called results. Operation, if we are to look at it, it's a string, and result is actually a double, and that is where we'll be storing the results of whatever we want to calculate. So after we create the object, you can see we give it the operation, the value of whichever object dot the property text. So we put that in the operation variable, and then we create the result variable, which we reference, and um, we, since it's a double, we'll double pass the text, which is actually in string form, and so we'll have to convert it to a double since result is a double, and we use the double dot pass function. Then we will store that in the label dot text, which, since its text property is a string, we'll have to use the system convert to string, which will contain the result, and it will concatenate it to an empty string and then the operation that you'll put. So that will basically show whatever your input is when you're adding. So let's say 21 plus another input, and then we will look at that in the next function, which, if we look at it down there, is actually a switch case, which when we click, so that's an event I made for the click button. So it's called equal click, and the first thing we'll do is we'll empty the label, so will consider it an empty string, and then we'll use a switch case to monitor the operation, since it's gonna contain like the numeric text, which is basically the mathematical functions that we want to carry out. So the first case is if you click on if you click on plus, then the text should be displaying the result, which we add. So now here, this is where we use the arithmetic function, the plus. So this is where we add the double pass. Remember, the display text, it comes in string form, so we have to convert it to a double because result is also a double, so we will have to add them. If you click on add, you'll want to add whatever your inputs are together, and then following that, we use the toString method, which is an inbuilt C# method, just like other mathematical functions that we'll look at later. And then we use the break, which comes after every case. So when we look at the minus, multiplication, divide, we can see that all we do is we just change the mathematical function. So minus, if it's minus, if you're minusing, or if you're multiplying, dividing, it actually does it. And since both of the result and the double pass that we've just done, they're both in numerical form, so both of there's no errors. If we are to run it, just to look at how they all work, you can see there's the label that you created, and the label basically shows your input plus the plus or minus whichever operation that you've put. So when we click the equal sign, the switch case works. So depending on whichever mathematical function you've input, it will simply carry out the result plus double pass into string. Now looking back at the other calculator, it seemed like it was appending the previous input, which we don't want. So I went ahead and created an empty string immediately after inputting your result. So after inputting a result, we want that input to go to the label, and then an empty string will be put on the display screen so that when the next input occurs, the screen is clear and the other input is already at the label. There we go, it works well. So basically all the signs seem to be working, which is a good thing. And that's the switch case. That's actually how the switch case works. It looks, if you've put the plus or the minus, then it will carry out that specific functionality. So to add more function to the scientific calculator, I went ahead and already wrote the code, and you'll find that the square root, cos, and sine and log, they all carry the same logic. So what I did using cos, so I had to click on each individual button of the scientific function, have the value of the text displayed or text, so whatever you input, and then the labeled text, which basically shows whatever calculation you're carrying out. We'll convert that to a string because we want to output it, and it's a text property. So it will just show the cos plus, then opening brackets, and then the text that you're displaying, and plus the closing brackets. Then we will store that the cos, the one that we referenced when we are starting, that we declared when we're starting the code. We'll basically use the math.cos built-in method, and it will take in that cos value. So that is whatever the double pass display text has. And after that, we'll just display it on the screen. And to do that, we will have to store it in the screen text, which we'll have to convert to a string, from double to a string. Moving on, I do the same for sine and square root. As you can see, I use the math.square root method and then the math.sine method, and then in the pi, since I had to click the individual scientific buttons to add the event for pi, it's basically a value, and I just assigned that when you click on pi, the text should the display text should be displaying the value 3.14, which is basically the pi value. And I do something different for the power 2, because to power 2, they basically that value times the value itself, and then we just want the screen to display that value, which it will have to be converted to a string since we input it into it's contained in the text property, so we have to convert it to a string. I do the same for the 1 over x function. We just create a variable called double a, which will capture the convert double, then it will divide that, and we input it to the screen. Now for log, just to check if the standard and scientific, they both work, and also dark mode also works, and you'll see that now to see pi, and then we'll have and then we'll have 14 cos, which works. We have 12 sine, clear. Now we can see our calculator is all coming together, it all works. We'll use 65 times 65, which is basically 65 squared. And then the dark mode also works in the scientific and also in the standard. Then the about me just says, hey, I'm Harry Etienne, 19 years of age, and coding is cool. And calculator goes back, it still functions well, does the inputs, you can see it, and there we go.